Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be doing once again a look at Spider-Man No Way Home and why this film is an incredibly important and sends a very incredibly important message to Hollywood, which is stop making deals with the Chinese Communist Party until they, obviously best case scenario, go away, but at the very least until they stop, putting their people in concentration camps, etc., and all that and other nonsense, because this film is doing remarkably to the point where it's outpacing several pre-pandemic films, all without China, to the point where even some shills in the media who have been running cover for all the Hollywood failures that we have seen this past year, of course, blaming COVID nonstop, and then all of a sudden the narrative begins to change once this film starts to break said narrative. But even they are starting to wake up to the fact that, you know what? You don't really need China to have a massive, not just billion-dollar film, but potentially upwards of close to $2 billion, all without China, all while still having a $200+ million budget. And in the end, all that you have that's a difference is that you have fan service done right, you have nostalgia done right, and you have the ability to market a film through, and I would say arguably mostly through, rumors and speculation, to the point of getting people interested and excited to want to go see this film because of the various elements of nostalgia that, again, in my opinion, are done incredibly well. So before going into that, please make sure that you smash that like button, light that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure you subscribe to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time I have a video or live stream goes live on the channel. So apologies for the later than usual video, but as you all know, I am stay-at-home dadding while daycare is closed for the holidays and obviously being off from school. And I also was able to do a podcast earlier with Chrissy Mayer, so be on the lookout for that in the coming days. We recorded it live, so a bunch of people were able to watch it live, so thank you for those that did, and it'll be available once again as a premiere podcast. I think sometime next week. I think Tuesday of next week is when it's slated. But just be ready to watch that over on Christy Mayer's channel. So as we go into it, let's go ahead and go through this headline. Spider-Man No Way Home, now top Hollywood title of 2021 overseas with $645 million. So it has now surpassed No Time to Die, which only had foreign money to be able to prop it up, climbing to $1.16 billion. And again, all of this without China. As it says right here, it has made $516.4 million domestically, while it's at $644.9 at the international box office, and it only dropped 5.6% overseas. So on Monday, overseas, it made $30.1 million, and it made on Tuesday $28.4 million. So this film is holding incredibly strong, even though we're in the midst of pandemic, and even though we're in the midst of various countries continuing to lock down, amidst us finding out more and more information about just how unhelpful and just how ineffective those things truly are. And in the midst of all of that, people are still going out in droves and in waves to go see this film, and we haven't even seen exactly what kind of numbers this movie will do in a place like Japan, which is typically a pretty good area for a film or just the character of Spider-Man in general. So we'll see that happen in early January. What is very interesting, though, of course, is the fact that they kind of point this out right here. Already becoming number one movie of 2021 worldwide as it swung past $1 billion last weekend. It's also now the number one title of the year overseas for all Hollywood releases, overtaking No Time to Die. Currently ahead of No Way Home are a trio of Chinese movies before Peter Parker can claim the overall number one spot, which I think it is going to do quite easily. Here's what's extra amazing about this John Watts directed installment, Rapid Ascension. No Way Home fully overtook Far From Home's worldwide total in just 14 days, doing so without China. That market had contributed about $200 million in Far Away Home's 2019 total. No Way Home is not currently dated in China. You know, I've said this now in several videos, that Sony, as the sole distributor of this film, please do not put this film out in China. This, to me, is one of the best ways to send a message to a country that we know as a fact, as a verifiable fact, has gone through the process of putting their minority populations into concentration camps, right? The Uyghur Muslim concentration camps. We know about these as a fact. We know that they've treated the rest of their people in terrible ways. We already know and are hearing now about new things going on, even in Hong Kong. I mean, I don't know exactly what else needs to happen before people start to wake up to the things that are going on before our very eyes. And one thing that I think as Hollywood could learn from and could really do well with is to finally actually stand up for principles that matter. not doing dealings and not helping out by providing 75% of the revenue made when you release a film in China to the Chinese Communist Party could be one of the best things for you to do. This is a movie that's, again, pacing ahead of where Spider-Man Far From Home did. Again, that film was a billion-dollar film, and it needed $200 million from China in order to do it. This film is already at $1.1 billion. It's only been out for 2 weeks. It's still got a long way to go. Many are projecting it to make around $1.75 billion. My range has it between $1.5 and $2 billion by the end of its run. And again, all of that can happen without ever setting foot, without ever putting any release date, without putting any theaters in China available with this movie. And I would say that now is the time, not just, of course, to stick it to the pandemic narrative, but even more so in this, obviously, that first part. Studios probably don't really care a whole lot about it because they've been embracing that narrative for a very long time with all their films that have not done well. Sony, of course, has done better than others. But anyway, I digress. One message, though, that I think we should really be following, especially as far as studios are concerned, is which studios, especially now that we know more than ever about what's going on in China, now that we know more than ever about the true horrors of the Communist Party in China, now that it's become a lot more mainstream to talk about these various issues, which studios are actually going to put their money where their mouth is and actually stand up for and defend human rights. Because I can tell you something that does not help human rights. I can tell you something that does not help people, and that is doing dealings in China with the Chinese Communist Party, allowing them to receive millions upon millions of dollars. Again, they get 75% of any box office made in their country, whereas the studios only get 25%. So even if you have a massive $200 million film, they're only getting 25% of it, which is really nothing in comparison to the rest of it. All that other money going straight back to the Communist Party in China, which helps them to continue to fund, to stay in power, and continue to fund to treat their people as terribly as they are doing. And again, obviously, we know that through the pandemic, various other countries, which we have oftentimes seen as being, better than, better governments than the government that we find, the communist government that we find in China. We obviously have people in the comment section all the time saying, well, your country's no better, or what about this country, etc. Hey, I've never said that anytime a government comes in and violates the civil liberties and civil rights of another person, that somehow makes it excusable just because it happens to have happens to happen in a certain country or not. That is not the purpose. The purpose of what I say in these videos and when I talk about specifically and why I point out China specifically is because not only are they doing all of these things that now other countries are starting to do, but they're actually killing people. They're actually treating people in such a way that it's more disturbing than what we are seeing in Australia. And Australia is a pretty disturbing place right now. What we're seeing in New York City, more disturbing than what we're seeing in New York City, is the entire Communist Party of China. So, before people try and continue to do that in the comments section and say you need to stop talking about it, no, I'm not. Because again, this right here proves not just the pandemic narrative wrong, but also proves the narrative that you need China to make X amount of money. It completely does away with that. The fact that this film is not just the #1 film of the year, the fact that this film is not only going to be one of the highest grossing films associated with the MCU of all time, it's not only a fact that this film could even break $2 billion, which would again put it at the higher end of highest grossing films of the MCU of all time, not just highest ranking films of all time. That should be a message. Because all those other films that are going to be above it, all of them are going to have China money. All of them are going to have hundreds of millions of dollars that, again, most of it went to the Communist Party of China. So this is a time to send a message that you don't need China in order to do this. You don't need to work with the Communist Party in order to have a successful film. All you really need to do, who would have thunk, is to actually provide fan service, to actually listen to the fans, and to actually give people a product that is actually entertaining, that is actually fun, that is actually worth going to see, worth going to watch. And this is going to be the end result. Record-breaking numbers here. Again, upper echelon. No one would have ever thought that a film like this could have done this during the pandemic time because of how often that excuse was used. And yet, what do we see? We're seeing this film do insanely well. Right, we're already seeing this film just blow things out of the water, right? Specifically with this film, it's already made $396.7 million in net profit. We could see this film make upwards of $600 to $900 million in net profit based on estimations. We're already seeing that this film is destroying the entirety of the MCU this year. Again, when you take the entire total of the worldwide box office just from right? What they are projecting this film to make. Again, the conservative projections that the industry experts, so-called industry experts, are making, they think this film's going to make around $1.75 million. That's going to be more than Black Widow, Shang-Chi, and Eternals combined. 3 MCU films combined are going to hold nothing to this film. Right? If you add into this discussion the other Sony film from this year, you're looking at $2.2 billion versus $1.2 billion. 2 films versus 3 films. That is, again, insane. When you look at exactly how much money is going to be gotten from this by the different places, not only do you have $663 million potentially being received from them, from this product, from this movie, but also, of course, you have them, not only do you have theaters receiving $600+ million from the 2 Sony films of this year, Disney only providing $400 million to theaters this year, you also see a massive discrepancy in how much profit just from these 2 films versus these 3 films in general are. And then, of course, if you just have them stand on by themselves, you're going to see a film that by itself is going to be, in just a few days, really, most likely, surpassing that of the entirety of the MCU. That, to me, is a huge message. That, to me, is, again, not just a message of the kind of films that Hollywood needs to start making again, but also the fact that it is, once again, doing incredibly well when compared to films like Infinity War, when it's compared to films like Endgame. Again, films pre-pandemic. I always got attacked for comparing any film that did poorly to films that happened outside the pandemic time because they say, that's not really a fair comparison. Oh, is it still unfair when I'm comparing it and this film is beating Endgame and is beating Infinity War? Keep in mind, this movie right now in its total is vastly outpacing what Infinity War did in its domestic and will likely end up with a higher number domestically than Infinity War ever had. My dog Willow is incredibly upset by that news. She happens to be an Infinity War fan, and so she's very upset that this film is going to end up beating it. But can't make that excuse when a movie's failing, but when a movie's succeeding, is it still unfair? I would say nay, and I'm sure that there'll be people that will continue to make excuses for it, but ultimately what this leads to is a sign that, hey, Hollywood, you can make movies that can make crap ton of money, crap ton of profits, and guess what? You don't need China, you don't need the communists in China to get it done. So anyway, what are y'all's thoughts about this? Are you surprised that this film is doing as well as it is? And do you feel the same that I do, that Hollywood should take this as a message that you don't need to work with the communist regime in China, and that hopefully they'll get the message? Obviously, if you're going to ask me realistically, do I think that they're actually going to do that? No, because all they care about, unfortunately in many cases, is just the money. All they care about are profits. You saw just how much money they're going to be getting from this. They already made $300+ million in net gain profits, and likely will see $600 and $900 million. And Sony obviously will be keeping the vast majority of that, but even that still may not be enough for them. So they're willing to give money and know that they're giving money to a regime that's going to kill many of its citizens just because it can. They're okay with that as long as it helps their bottom line. This is the time not just for studios to send a message, it's also time for us to send a message that if these studios continue to do work and to continue to work and continue to make deals with countries like China, we keep our wallets shut. So what are your thoughts about that? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, slap that fire button on Odyssey. You're all amazing and beautiful people. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my December Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members. Animation commentator Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Dolores Ed, Dion, Father Christopher Miller, Hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeff Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyles 79, Laura, the Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson ×4, Mitch Dunaway, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody, Mondo Spieler, On to June, Orange Chat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Allen, Stan Andrian, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, and Tina Bojan, and of course, the Empress of the Universe, Tina B. Thank you very much for being my Patreon members. And for my Subscribe Star members, UAB Mad Dog, Mike Jackson, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stand For, John B., Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. Thank you very much for supporting me on Subscribestar. And to my 4 members over on Locals.com, Kara Tharp, UAB Mad Dog, once again, Mike Jackson, Bifford a Hobbit, and Robert Barnes. Thank you for supporting me on Locals. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every video and live stream, check out the top link in the video description below. It's called Willow, or w.lo, Willow link. It'll bring you to all of my social media platforms and also to all of the various other locations that you can support the channel. You can get access to things like giveaways, where I do giveaways of 4K films, 4K steelbooks, digital codes, all kinds of stuff every single month. Also, there's a level where you get access to all of that, plus an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger, where you also get to ask questions that we will answer on every episode of the podcast. And at the final level, you also have the ability, the Chosen of Valhalla level, you have the ability to have all of that, plus in your first month, get a free t-shirt of your choice, any color, sent anywhere in the world, and also get to be featured once a month on the Chosen of Valhalla live stream featured on the main channel. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, check out the link in the description. You're all amazing and beautiful people. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.